Yeehaw! Hi everybody, it's Jonas Lamis, and today my guest is Alora Chistiakoff. And Alora is the co-founder, and she's a principal at a interesting new media, new digital strategy consulting firm headquartered here in Central Texas called the Indigo Heron Group. All right, so welcome to the show, Alora.
Thank you.
Tell us, what is the Indigo Heron Group?
Well, the Indigo Heron Group is a consulting firm based here in Austin that focuses on web development around your content strategy. So the idea is, in the early days of the web, the focus was on the technology or on development efforts, and people put sites up, but nobody ever updated the content because you didn't think about that part. Now, in the days of the social web, the content is clearly the most important thing you can do to make sure that you're engaging customers and that they have a reason to come back.
Right, and so that people can find you, right? Because more and more people are talking about the real-time web, you know, and not necessarily which post or video that you created a year ago has the most hits. It's like which post yesterday had the most hits, right?
And people don't even want to see what's happened a year ago because they'll assume it's no longer relevant.
Right.
And especially when you start dealing with multi-channel strategy, which is things like Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, if you haven't been producing regular content in those channels, then people are going to stop looking for you in those channels. And because you have a distributed user base across all of these different platforms, if you're not engaging customers sort of where they already live, then you're missing a lot of opportunities. But what happens a lot in companies is they'll focus on their website, and maybe they'll even be producing regular content on their website. But then somebody over in marketing might be dealing with Twitter, and somebody over, in the CEO's office might be dealing with Facebook, and you get very conflicting messages and tones, and you don't necessarily remain true to any kind of brand cohesion across these multiple platforms.
Right. So for smaller companies, that's a lot what we deal with. What's the difference between having a brand for my company and having a brand for myself?
This is a great question, and actually it's one that I've been discussing a lot lately. This is really important because one of the things people forget is that in the end, business is person to person. So Jonas Lamis works with Alora Chistiakoff and we get something done. And while it might be under the banner of Tech Ranch and Indigo Heron, it's still Jonas Lamis and Alora Chistiakoff. So there's a certain amount of built-in personal branding that we've historically always expected people to have. You hire a salesperson because he's got a great Rolodex. You're not going to hire a top-notch salesperson if they're not bringing a certain network to you as part of the package. And that's really their personal brand, and how they cultivate that is really important to their ability to contribute to your business success. And so over time, as things get a little bit dicier and a little bit less clear, what becomes more important is making sure that you are behaving in a way or speaking in a way that is true enough to your brand while still being authentic. I think small businesses and entrepreneurs in one-person, two-person shops will continue to have the most difficulty with separating between the two. Right. Larger companies, it can be a little bit easier to do that, but I think for small businesses, you have to remember that first and foremost, people are going to do business with a person. And if you don't have personal credibility, and that extends to your personal brand and what you tweet about and what you post on Facebook, then no amount of work is going to salvage your professional brand.
So let me give you an example. Okay. Much to my chagrin, I turned 40 this week. Right?
Happy birthday.
Yes, I turned 40 years old. And so I'm from like a generation of people that Gartner affectionately has called the digital immigrants, right? We're folks who didn't grow up with the World Wide Web, right? We didn't grow up blogging. We didn't grow up, with everything, all pictures posted on Flickr or Facebook. Some of us have gotten here as quickly as we can, obviously, but many others not so much, right? And so, my background, I spent a decade, 2 decades working in really interesting technology, startups, software, venture-backed software plays, where I was the VP of marketing, I was the VP of biz dev. My colleagues and I, we spent a lot of time, writing in the company's voice, right? Being the voice of the company, but all of the content that we created was under our companies, right? And many of us didn't go off and have separate channels and outlets. Today, so for one of my portfolio companies, we've been looking for a marketing leader, right? And I go to my Rolodex and I look at the people who I've worked with in the past, bring some of them in to interview and things like that. Their personal brands are pretty much non-existent online, right? They don't have a blog, they don't have a Twitter feed, they have 32 friends on Facebook, you know? They might not even have a LinkedIn, and these are very competent, capable people who have been leaders of the industry that now the technology wave has kind of passed them by, and I can't hire them.
Right.
We can't hire those people to be the next marketing leader of a new technology platform.
Right. Right. And I think that's a really interesting point, because one of the problems that I see a lot of business leaders struggle with is that line. So especially, I think, and it might be very relevant to the demographic issue that you raise here, is that in sort of the industrial age paradigm of doing things, it was all about the company.
Right.
And everybody was a soldier marching under the company's umbrella.
That's right.
Which, you like to talk about Coase's Law a lot, and the fact that as we've moved into more of an information age, we're now really in the era of small business, because we have access to a long tail market that didn't exist before the internet.
Right.
And so it's got a fundamental ripple effect on how we conduct ourselves, because business is automatically changed. And so what I see a lot with companies is that when you have people who are used to being one element of a big corporate structure, they're very conditioned and very clear on how they have to behave within that paradigm. But a lot of them have yet to figure out how to make the transition to being a real, authentic person, because social media demands that. You can't, if it's obvious that somebody's ghostwriting your blog, people are going to stop reading your blog.
Right.
There are plenty of people who do ghostwriting, and that's fine, but there's a reason they call it ghostwriting. You're supposed to be transparent about it. And so you have to find a way to transition these great skills and this very deeply entrenched, experience in this space into a branded, kind of focused, people-centric, authentic messaging machine that the social media world really, really demands. And I think there's a great sort of mentorship opportunity for you with some of your peers in this space that you've worked with in the past.
I'm trying. They'd rather play golf than build their blogs, unfortunately.
Well, who can argue with that?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting point, but I think that's sort of the micro level, because companies struggle with the same thing, right? I mean, companies will look at, okay, this is our corporate message, but in the end, again, people deal with other people, and if your corporate message says we are great at this, but your personal experience with somebody on the other end of the phone is, wow, that was really horrible and you were useless and wasted my time, then what that corporate brand says it should be doesn't actually matter to your daily life and getting done whatever it was you were trying to get accomplished. So I think there's that paradigm shift that's going on, and some people are going to just be left behind. Some of them are going to opt out because they're not interested. On the other hand, then you have my 65-year-old father who calls me once a week excited about who he encountered on Facebook that he hasn't spoken to in 30 years.
Yeah, right.
And they're trying, but they don't quite necessarily know what to do with it.
All right, so give us a little commercial about Indigo Heron. What can we get from you guys? Indigo
Heron does a lot in the content space, especially around training. So again, my background is all e-commerce, web development since about 2000. And we spent most of our time building sites to showcase products. Back then, nobody really cared about things like reviews or things like that. Now you've got other companies that have emerged into the space around that. But one of the things that we really focus on is making sure that your site's functionality is helping build the kind of community and customer relationships that you're going for.
Cool. All right, folks, so we encourage you to check out Alora online. What website can we find you at?
IndigoHeron.com. Otherwise, you can also usually catch me on Twitter. I have a bit of an addiction.
Yes, indeed. Tune in next time. We'll talk to another interesting person, another interesting brand from Central Texas. Talk to y'all soon.